Hey everyone, in this episode we're going to talk all about slings. If you don't know what a sling is, you're looking at one right now. Well, you're looking at two actually. At the end of this episode, I'm going to show how different sling orientations, or the way that you choose to connect your sling to an object, and how it can affect the strength of the sling itself. So stay tuned for that. First, let's just go over what is a sling. So slings are loops of webbing that are usually sewn together, and they can be used in a variety of different ways. For example, they can be used as part of a personal anchor system. They can be used to create an extendable quick draw. They can be used to create a chest harness. They can be used to create an emergency harness for your waist and legs. They can be used for light rigging. They can be used as a hauling tool. And sometimes they can even be used as a prusik loop to create a friction hitch to ascend or descend a rope. They are a highly versatile instrument despite their unassuming nature. Slings can be made from a number of different materials, but one of the most popular, especially recently, is Dyneema. Dyneema is a very strong, tightly woven fabric. And when I say it's strong, I mean it is strong. It is approximately 15 times stronger than steel. You heard that right. And it is almost always white. In fact, I would argue that it always is white because it cannot be dyed. That is just a physical property of Dyneema. So this purple here, for example, couldn't possibly be Dyneema, so they likely just bordered it with some polyester or nylon. Same with the red in this sling here. Nylon and polyester, although I don't have any slings to show you, are also used to make slings. These fabrics are somewhat heavier and bulkier because they aren't as strong as Dyneema and require more material to compensate. But they are slightly more rugged and durable in many ways, such as with cut abrasion resistance. They also have more stretch, although the amount of stretch is negligible, meaning you still wouldn't want to take a fall on it. All of these fabrics are extremely static, meaning they effectively do not stretch. Sport climbing ropes, for example, are dynamic, meaning they stretch, which allows a climber to take falls in relative comfort and safety. Slings are not supposed to be fallen on. When using a sling as a personal anchor, make sure that you never allow there to be any slack in the system. So, if you're connected to, let's say, a bolt or any other type of anchor point, you never want to allow it to become slack. You always want to maintain tension in this connection point. If you find that you need to shorten the amount of slack that you have, then you can bring it through like that, and then you've got it doubled, and now it'll be easier for you to maintain the tension. If you wanted it somewhere 2/3 of the way up the sling, then what you can do is you can tie an overhand knot So let's say you wanted it, 3/4 of the way up or something. So this is 3/4, And then with this, you bring it through here. And then you have a 3/4 shortened, well, 3/4 extended system really. And it's a 1/4 shortened. And although keep in mind that the moment you tie a knot into Dyneema, you cut its strength in half by 50, almost 60% in some cases. So nylon and polyester are much more forgiving when it comes to knots. Dyneema, it just does not like any, sharp bend radiuses whatsoever. Also, you want to make sure that you never, ever climb above your anchor point. So if this is your anchor point right here, and you're climbing around and you're up here, once you cross this horizon line here, it could get ugly for you because this static loop is not going to produce the fall factor whatsoever. And it's just, this is how people really get hurt. The only reason you should be climbing above a primary tie-in point is if you have a secondary tie-in point above it. Most slings rated for climbing are at least a minimum of 22 kilonewtons in strength. Now, in order to understand how that strength is created, you have to understand that if I were to cut this right here and then make it one strand, it would only be 11 kilonewtons strength, or minimum breaking strength, MBS. That is because this relies on the basket formation for multiplying the strength. And with that, we've finally gotten to the fun part where we're going to go over some of the most popular ways that you can attach a sling to an object and how it affects its MBS, or minimum breaking strength. So here we are. For this, we're going to pretend that this length of rope that I've placed inside of a glass, borosilicate glass tube, is going to be a branch, or anything that you can imagine that is long and thin and strong and that you would anchor to. So if we just take this, and I don't even know if I have enough room here. So if we pretend that now this is the top up here, gravity's going down this way, it's pulling it this way. If you connect a 22 kilonewton sling to an anchor point like this, you are going to have 22 kilonewtons worth of strength. You'll be using the full capacity of the sling because of how it's oriented. There's no knots or twists or turns. It's just right over. And so 22 kilonewtons in this orientation. Now, if you were to take this and put it over and now I'm not gonna, obviously if you were actually climbing you would want to pay attention to the twisting going on here, but I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, obviously not climbing on it. So in this orientation where the sling is doubled up, around the anchor point, there would be 44 kilonewtons worth of strength. So this configuration multiplied the strength of this sling by a factor of 2 by doubling it up. Okay? And then next, if you were to take a sling and create fourths with it, then you will create a tie-in point that, or an anchor system, whatever you want to call it, that has 88 kilonewtons theoretical minimum breaking strength. So you can see how, if you double it, you double the strength. If you quadruple it, you quadruple the strength. Next, I've seen a lot of people use their slings like this, where they take it and then wrap some of the excess around the tie-in point until they have what looks like this. Now this is only going to double the strength. So the 22 kilonewton sling is now 44 kilonewtons in this orientation. And then finally, if you take your loop and you girth hitch it onto your tie-in point, again, we're going to have to go down this direction. What this does is this actually cuts the strength in half, theoretically. In reality, I've seen experiments done, particularly on the How Not To channel, where they show that these values can be slightly higher, not by much, but not quite 50%, but above it. So that would mean the 22 kilonewton sling here is only going to be roughly somewhere around 11 kilonewtons. Certainly not lower, but maybe a little higher. So it's always important to know that when any chance that you get where you can avoid girth hitching yourself, you should avoid it. So instead, if you can, connect like this, then you should absolutely do it. There's no reason to girth hitch if you don't need all that slack. And if you don't, but I mean, especially with sport climbing, a lot of people do connect. I mean, considering that you're not really going to see much beyond at most 4, or really pushing it like 5 kilonewtons on like even the biggest of whippers, I don't think you really need to worry about this only being 11 kilonewtons if it's in the girth hitch formation or orientation. You know what I'm saying? If you can take a whipper and it never really ever exceeds 4 or 5 kilonewtons, then when you're right at your anchor point with your static Dyneema or polyester or nylon sling, and you're keeping it taut and you're doing what you're supposed to do and you're not letting it slack it in the system, then I can't imagine you getting, 1 or 2 kilonewtons on that, unless you really were trying and you were climbing above the anchor point, which is a big no-no. Also, when these things become very taut, when they're tensioned heavily from your weight and maybe even the addition of gear that you're hauling, you want to avoid abrasion, especially if the stone is sharp, or if you're in a tree and if you're in a tree and the bark is aggressive, just watch out for that. It's unlikely that it's just gonna, get cut. I mean, you really need a truly sharp blade to cut through tension Dyneema, but it's enough of a concern that the manufacturer of all of these slings that I've ever seen makes mention of that being something to worry about. It's important to remember that when you quadruple up a sling like this, even though this 22 kilonewton sling in this formation has 88 kilonewtons of theoretical minimum breaking strength, this carabiner will break at 25 kilonewtons. So there's really no point in doing this unless you're just trying to manage slack. Also, slings are very easy to manage on your harness. All you do is you hold one end with one finger, and with the other finger start twisting. And just keep doing this until you pretty much can't anymore. Get it nice and tight. Okay, and now once you've done that, you can take it, and you see how it's wrapping around itself like that? That's perfect for storage on the harness. You could even have doubled this over before you did this. And then I'll show you again with this sling. Make sure you have the sewn portion in the center. Okay, and then when you put it together like that, it's gonna wrap up like that. Look at that, beautiful storage. And after you've done this, the Dyneema will not deform in shape. So it won't get permanent twists in it or anything. It comes undone very easily. And then, of course, if you want to create an extendable quick draw to make, your own quick draws using a sling, all you do is you put one carabiner on one side, and then you put it through like that. Then take it onto both ends like that. And so now you have a quick draw, but with this, now you can, if you need to extend it, all you do is pull it like that. And voila. I love doing that. Thanks so much for watching this episode on slings. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit like, leave questions and comments below, and check out more of my content on my channel. I have a number of playlists for hitches and knots and climbing gear and techniques, so check it out.